This is the Ruckus and The Menace Sports Podcast.
Oh no! We suck again!
I'm getting confused. What game are you calling?
I'm calling both games.
It is caught by Kelsey! Touchdown! Kansas City!
I need 3 of those things, baby. We ain't done yet. We ain't done yet. You like that? You like that? I like that.
Ruckus and the Menace Sports fam, how we doing? You are listening to episode number 114 of the Ruckus and the Menace Sports Podcast. I'm Spanish the Menace.
And I am Ruckus, always causing a ruckus, never not causing a ruckus.
And that's the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And on this episode
Boo!
of the Ruckus and the Menace Podcast, we're going to go over a little bit of housekeeping and quite a bit of a recap of us not being on last week. The Eastwood segment, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The film room, where we make picks for week 4 of the college football season and week 3 of the NFL season. We recap week 2 of the NFL season in the high heat. Take the validity meter test on our color commentary and wrap it up with our stud and dud of the week. And kind of to start, I was on vacation last week. So that was why we were not on. We still had our regularly scheduled content. So you still got, with me being gone, New Era and Old DC, Road to Glory, and from G5 to Natty from me. So, and right away, I think the big thing is that we've had a pretty good run with our episodes. I think the Beltway market has so far for the Super Bowl race or Super Bowl runs, New Era and Old DC has been getting a bunch of hits.
Yes, sir. And the Super Bear race, yes, it's kind of more a underdog compared to the Commanders when it comes to depth. But
is it really though? I think the Commanders overall on the game of Madden is much worse.
Because I'm saying defensively, I feel like the Bears are more suited, but I also kind of cheated by signing a free agent at the beginning with Micah Hyde, but he's barely honestly touched the surface of the ball.
Nothing with my free agents. Although Cade York is still on the team for the Super Bowl run because he got cut week 1. So we kind of had to keep him in the series. But the next ones later on this week get quite fun for us in week 3.
Very entertaining, people say, and also shake and bake.
And I also will have on Friday, that'll be the video of the first primetime game in the new era, where Washington is taking on Joe Burrow.
At my ass.
But now we can move on now to the Eastwood segment and get right to the business at hand with the good, the bad, and the ugly, and that beautiful tumbleweed footage.
Okay, so what's good in sports this week, Mr. Spinnis?
I gotta say this. If we really had to specify the good to one specific person, it's gotta be Jason Kelsey.
Travis Swifties.
Oh, look, you could say that all you want as a Chiefs fan, but I think the really good and highly entertaining stuff right now as far as the Kelsey family, because Travis did not do diddly in the game yesterday, it's got to be Jason, because although both of them have done the cereal commercials, but Jason is comical. It's hard to hate him, because he is a very colorful offensive lineman.
That's what Philly does to you.
Oh man, but this is the good kind. Like, this is the good kind where he's incredibly entertaining, and the dynamic between the two is fun. Jason started out Monday Night Countdown while we were off on vacation, or for me at least. It was on Monday Night Countdown.
I mean,
Travis roasted him involving a shirt. A shirt that he got at Lululemon. And the quotable at the open when Swagoo and them started roasting Jason over the shirt was hilarious.
Fair, though, during this funny moment with Jason Kelsey, I was actually on vacation from Spanish. Hardy har har.
Oh, but then just today, Schefter was wearing a very similar costume style that Jason wore during the Super Bowl parade and his underdog speech after the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2018.
Who?
And
the Super Bowl in 2018?
Jason also had
or 2017, my bad.
It was the 2017 season, but the Super Bowl was in 2018.
I can't hear you.
It was definitely the Eagles that won that Super Bowl, beating Tom Brady, of course. Who he is his own kind of not so great on the Fox broadcasting booth. That is a digression for another day. And possibly another episode. But ESPN has done a great job of playing off of, especially this being Jason's homecoming to Philadelphia for Monday Night Football. And also the Kelsey Mix cereal that he collaborated with Travis on, and the New Heights podcast. So the Kelsey family dynamic has been incredibly good as far as seeing the commercials and stuff between the two brothers on air. Although outside of that, I am liking the Patrick Mahomes, Ted Lasso collabs on the State Farm commercials with Donnie Rojas.
Yeah,
football is life.
I love.
It's Cristo Fernandez who is the actor that plays Danny Rojas.
I do love the other commercials they put in there too. Like we were saying with the whole cereal commercials, but the one where it's the one where him and Josh Allen are in that arena with the Tigers and stuff, like in Roman times, and it's like that Pepsi commercial, and they're all like trying to do their thing. I like that one. I like, my favorite is and this has been around probably since the Chiefs won the first Super Bowl in 50 years, but it's the one with the with Andy Reid, and he's talking to the groundskeeper, and he was like, "That's
the Kansas City chefs."
He was like, "That's good and all, but what about who are the Kansas City chefs?"
Chefs.
That's my favorite one. Like, they used to play the Nuggies commercial and the other fast food stuff, but I haven't seen that as of late. But
yeah,
it's
a little different. I think the commercial landscape is definitely different here on the East Coast too.
I also like the guy that does the impressions of Mahomes, doing like the summaries of what happens in week 1 or week 2, or when Kadarius Toney gets cut. He was like, Kadarius, we love you, but you gotta go away. You gotta go away. He does like that Kermit the Frog. voice.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
I feel like you're crossing a little bit with your attempt at Patrick Mahomes with Dak Prescott.
I don't know about that, but the frog here. God damn it. Here we go.
Oh, I love this episode.
Well, if you're Jerry Jones and you don't have your veins popping out of your skull, then maybe you have a problem.
Or you're not George Kittle.
I think George Kittle would go at it a different way. Because Kittle, it seems like when he is trying to calm himself down, he like talks to himself rather than just being like a Dragon Ball Z character, in a sense, when they're about to like charge up.
Oh, but Kittle and Amon-Ra St. Brown with that Little Caesar stuff is brilliant. I catch passes. I catch right straight. I catch big old fish.
Yeah, I love that one too. I when you said Little Caesars, it reminded me of Pizza, Matt Stafford. But when I originally did that, thinking about the title for the newest episode of Super Bear Run, I was trying to either do the pronunciation of when the lady did the pizza, like over pronunciating a little bit, and then I was like, that'll be another day. Anyways,
all right,
let's get off.
And speaking of the LA Rams, the not so good and the bad in sports this week involves to the injuries suffered to the leading receivers in the LA Rams wide receiver room. Puka Nacua is already on IR. Cooper Kupp has a lower leg injury as well. That very well could put him on the IR. So the Rams' passing attack is now down to a lot of lower receivers.
Tutu Atwell, and I think D-Rob is still on their team.
Yeah, Demarcus Robinson is still there. They're down to Demarcus Robinson and such. And I think that the Rams... Well, they still have Kyron Williams. They have Colby Parkinson at tight end. But Matthew Stafford is going to have a very, very difficult time leading this offense that he doesn't quite have the rapport with the other receivers, and he's going to have to develop that fast in order to get the Rams on the board winning games.
Yep.
And the downright ugly this week happened in no short order. Tua turned the ball over. Tagovailoa suffered his third concussion in 3 years, and also, including his college time, his fourth in the last 5 years.
So I would have put him as dummy of the week for the episode, but I'll let Spanish talk.
I think the big thing, I will say this. I don't think you could put Tua as a complete dummy this week because he was playing in the heat of the moment, but I think we are running into the era where starting quarterbacks, as far as their scrambling ability, do not know the fundamentals on how to slide.
Only Tua. Literally only Tua. Because Lamar Jackson's done it. Patrick Mahomes has done it.
I was going to add Jaden Daniels needs to learn this.
Okay, but that's a one-off.
That is something of concern. But there were a lot of quarterbacks over the last 10, 15 years, RG being an example as well.
Well, he didn't really have much of a sample size.
The proper fundamental of sliding is becoming a lost art. And I don't even know if Josh Allen knows it.
Yes, he does. I've seen him do it many times against Chiefs defense. I've seen it happen to guys even earlier than Allen. I've seen Russell Wilson do it. I've seen a slew of
Well,
quarterbacks
Russell
do it.
Wilson was a former baseball player. Kyler Murray, a former baseball player. Most of these players that played baseball prior to being in the NFL definitely know how to do it.
I feel like if Tua was a real player on this, like a real player for the team, so to speak, I think he would have slid. And I think that's why I was putting him as a dummy, because he literally sacrificed his body with his head and was just like, well, screw it, let's do this. And then it ended badly for him because he's now they're wondering, that's why the Dolphins are wondering, well, do we like let him ruin the rest of his life potentially, or do we let him play? Because Tua is just like, F it, let's do another one. I didn't hear no bell. But the Dolphins are like, well, we heard the bell, but you just don't care.
Well, after the hit, he was stuck in that fencing position that he was in the last time, and then the Dolphins just took him out at that point and didn't bother to bring him back in.
But even before that, he probably understood the consequences and just said, F it. I'm not denying that because I saw it live on my point too.
I saw it as well. I saw the play as well. And I think there's a difference between knowing when to take that hit and fight for extra yards and knowing when to give yourself up in that sense. And that was a position where Tua went to fight for the extra yards because all the Tagovailoas know how to do is just they want to try and win football games. And no matter what cost. And I really think that if somebody is going to have to intercede for Tua to say, this is it for you, at least for this season, potentially even longer, to the point that, at this point, it's becoming very, very devastating of retirement.
Did I hear this correctly? But did you say something about mini Tagovailoas, or am I misunderstanding? Because I thought I only heard about one Tua.
Well, there is also his brother Talia.
What does his brother play?
He was also a quarterback. Has not made the league, but he was over at the University of Maryland. And
when was that?
Oh, Talia? Oh, rather recently. He was
okay.
He had initially declared for the NFL draft and didn't get drafted.
Well,
so Tua has siblings.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that you were actually saying that he had siblings. I didn't know that at all because the media doesn't really pull that through. It's more just the fact that the headliners.
Well, I think it was all kind of knowing that know-how on the outside of it, and I was actually paying attention to a lot more of some of the sports talk around it. And I think that Ryan Clark indeed has a point about it's going to take someone to intercede for Tua to actually either A, shut him down for the season, and B, possibly to have him come to grips with his football future.
But also, he's getting paid a lot of money too, which is I feel like that's probably why he was like, okay, I'm gonna keep playing, because he was like, well, I don't want to lose the rest of this money, even though I could.
Well, a good amount of that contract was already guaranteed.
Well, still, like, I feel like even if it was guaranteed, I feel like you go for the money, even then.
And I think I was watching the facility with Shady McCoy and all them, and Emmanuel Acho says his best. The football helmet is more so designed to prevent the skull from fracturing. It does not prevent the brain from injury. Traumatic brain injury can still exist even under the coverage of a helmet. And CTE, which we definitely know that certain players in the NFL today, and more than likely Tua will likely have, these will be things that you cannot diagnose that he had it.
Until he's dead.
Until autopsy. So yeah, if you want the best quality of life for yourself, you're gonna have to hang it up. You're gonna have to hang the helmet up. Hang the helmet up. And I don't even know if I would want you properly teaching and coaching kids playing football, especially with your hard-nosed style and wanting to lead with your helmet.
I think Tua is probably going to have a lot of therapy or some type of special ritual he goes through whenever it
I don't
comes
doubt
to
that for a
when he's
second.
retired.
I don't doubt that for a second. Because it's a rough sport with football. People get hurt. And trust me, a lot of people's joints and stuff are not the same after playing a long career of professional football. And honestly, for the quality of life, yeah, Tua's best bet right now is to hang it up. Miami has now signed Tyler Huntley as a backup quarterback as well to also compete with Skylar Thompson for the job. I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Huntley plays on.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Tyler Huntley beats out
Skylar Thompson in a matter of days. It's just a matter of learning the Mike McDaniel playbook.
It's the Lamar Jackson decoy versus Skylar Thompson. I mean, if the Lamar Jackson decoy does better than Skylar Thompson, well, no shit. He's gonna take him in that job. But anyways, we should probably move on.
Yep. And now we move on, continuing with football, on to the film room. And last week, Ruckus had a heck of a scoring run, outscoring me 22-19 over the 2-week period and taking a 27-25 lead.
You could say I put a ruckus on that ass.
It wasn't that large of a difference. So it was not that bad.
Well, I'm gonna take the small victories here.
Whatever you say. But the first game on the list, all college games are ranked versus ranked. And they will be for 2 points apiece. We move on to the Big Ten for the first couple of games, as we will start with Illinois and Nebraska.
It took me a little bit to figure out this pick, but I think the doppelganger of Patrick Mahomes and the Cornhuskers.
Raiola.
Yep. I think Nebraska's gonna beat Illinois. Go Cornhuskers.
Dylan Raiola. I'm wondering where he had previously played college ball.
But while he does that stat,
no, he is actually just a freshman at he's just a freshman at Nebraska.
Okay. Well,
I'm actually taking I'm taking the Cornhuskers as well. And the interesting irony about last week with the Cyhawk game, and I was watching that while I was on the road. The quarterback for Iowa State is the son of former NFL tight end Anthony Becht. And Anthony Becht is now a UFL coach for the St. Louis Battlehawks. And that is actually a player I have met in person before.
Gnarly. It sounds like you met a lot of people.
I've met a few in my time frame, and Anthony Becht was actually one of them. So, and then the next one in the Big Ten, Southern Cal versus Michigan.
I think the mighty Michigan Wolverines take the dub over the University of Southern California.
Yeah, I think I also am taking Michigan as well. Utah and Oklahoma State. This game is in Stillwater, though.
Even then, I think Utah beats Oklahoma State.
I too am taking the Utes in the Big 12.
Thank you, Saul.
And then the SEC.
All right.
Tennessee versus Oklahoma.
You know, I feel like I'd get disowned by my family if I went against Oklahoma. And I don't always prefer Dos Equis, but when I do, I prefer some Boomer Sooner. I'm picking Oklahoma.
And I am actually not going with the Sooners.
Boo!
Don't
listen to him, folks. Don't listen to him, folks.
Rocky
Don't listen to him,
Top,
folks.
you'll always be home sweet home to you, to me. Good old Rocky Top. Rocky Top, Tennessee. Go Vols! I am taking the Volunteers over the Sooners here. And taking the pure SEC power instead of this transplant SEC wannabe Oklahoma Sooner crap.
We dominated the Big 12, so suck it. We will beat you. We'll beat you.
Oklahoma couldn't win a natty against the SEC opponents.
Oh, because Joe Burrow was at it? Just because Joe Burrow was at his peak and so was Jamar Chase before they hit the NFL? Give me a break.
Tim Tebow?
Okay, Tim Tebow, didn't
Tim
last
Tebow?
very far. Tim Tebow did not get very far after his reign at Florida. He had one playoff game win with the Broncos, and that was it. And then he started thinking more about Jesus and his success.
Tebow was more of a college quarterback anyway. It's not like...
Exactly.
And now we move on to the NFL. Texans, Vikings. A battle of a couple of 2-0 teams that one of them we definitely expected to be 2-0, and the other kind of became 2-0 out of nowhere.
RKO straight out of nowhere? Or just straight out of nowhere?
Not quite St. Louis style, because Orton is from St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, we gotta put the origin in there, okay. Anyways, I think CJ Stroud puts an RKO on the Vikings, because CJ Stroud, my man, the myth, the legend, is doing well offensively. And defensively, it's about sound too versus the Vikings. Because the Vikings are kind of old on defense, whereas the Texans are just chomping at the bit.
Oh, I think that the Texans have more offensive weapons that they can go to, and can provide better mismatches than even what San Francisco could do. Not that San Francisco doesn't have it.
I mean, they definitely didn't have it against the Chiefs, but here we are.
Completely off the run of it, because that was two completely different football seasons. But we digress.
Doesn't even matter. But anyway,
I'm taking the Texans over the Vikings. I think the Texans continue to be 3-0, but this is also showing the mettle of Kevin O'Connell being kind of a pretty decent starting quarterback whisperer. And maybe Sam Darnold, surprisingly, could be more for real than we think he is.
I think the magic wears off here pretty soon.
Oh, I think that the Vikings... But remember, even with
sinks. I think the ship sinks.
Even with Kirko Chains, the Vikings were known for even being able to scrap and win a couple of close games every now and then. And the Vikings also are dealing with the quad contusion of Justin Jefferson.
Okay, they were dealing with the same shit last season, so I think it's going to be the same old song and dance.
Oh, Justin Jefferson's injury last year was way worse.
Okay.
The injuries to the Vikings were way worse last year. This one, it's a thigh bruise. I mean, it'd be tough to walk on, tough to walk and run on, but I I don't see Justin Jefferson being affected that much. But I think the Texans just have more pieces that are able to do well and hold the Vikings to nothing. Eagles Saints.
I have the Eagles putting the hammer down, or should I say the claws down, on the Saints, because I believe the Eagles have a better defensive pact versus the Saints, whereas the Saints have more offense. So I have the Eagles, nonetheless.
Okay. Here are the notables here. The Saints throughout the first 2 weeks against Carolina and Dallas, they have scored a combined 91 points. There has got to be something that can stop them. I think the Eagles have the right pieces in the pass rush to potentially do that and get Derek Carr off of his game. I am going to be taking the Eagles, but the Saints are surprisingly overachieving enough that they may not make it easy. And this is one part of a potential litmus test that the Saints have coming up.
Yep. All right.
Chargers Steelers. A couple of very surprising 2-0 ball clubs.
So for the Chargers, it seems like their main kryptonite's going to be their defense. I mean, you have Derwin James at safety, and maybe Asante Samuel Jr., but like other than that, like your D tackle room is kind of hit or miss. The Steelers, well, their offense is kind of a hit or miss because they don't know whether to put in Justin Fields or put in Russell Wilson. That and you have the uncertainty of the wide receivers with those said QBs. So that's why I picked Justin Herbert and the Chargers.
I actually went the other way around. Number one, this game is at home for the Steelers. This is the Steelers' home opener. Jim Harbaugh has had an emphasis on running the football. And Justin Herbert has not played well in terms of passing the ball. I think Herbert also is dealing with a small amount of injury. However, I still am going to say the Steelers because I think that the Justin Fields is going to find a way to get his mojo. And I think the running game of Pittsburgh could be very interesting, and they defensively can really test the Chargers, especially with a TJ Watt and a couple of their other notable defensive pieces, even like a Minkah Fitzpatrick. So I'm taking the Steelers in a very low-scoring game. And then we have a couple of entertaining 1-1 ball clubs with the Detroit Lions and the Arizona Cardinals.
I think the Lions probably pounce on the Cardinals early, and from there it just becomes a bloodbath in a sense for the Cardinals, as they will get beat pretty badly.
Did the injury to Amon-Ra, or I think some soreness to Amon-Ra St. Brown, makes this a very
Have they used Laporta though?
Currently at this point, no.
But I think some time for him.
I think Jameson Williams has been doing great. Jameson Williams over the past 2 games has actually been incredible for the Lions and has actually been a very steady piece to really work alongside what Amon-Ra and complement receiver-wise what Amon-Ra can do. I still am going to take the Lions because I think the defense on the Lions side is a lot more polished than the offense of what Kyler Murray has, even with Marvin Harrison Jr. being able to be as dynamic as he is. I'm taking Motor City Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions to improve to 2-1.
Color commentary, or not color commentary.
Well, now we
or high
move on to
heat.
the high heat where we recap the week that was. And we will talk about a grand total of 5 games in the high heat segment. And there are a couple of key ones. The New Orleans Saints 44, the Dallas Cowboys 19. And the question here is, were we wrong about the Saints? Or is this just a team overachieving to complete an upset over an NFC contender on paper?
So I feel like you kind of hit both questions pretty defensively, and I think you're right because I think we both kind of at the prediction said that the Saints weren't going to make it. I probably went farther and said that Dirk Carr wasn't going to make it, and he was just going to be a washed-up quarterback and not do well with the offense that the Saints has provided for him. I think, if anything, if he keeps it up, if the offense slash defense also stays healthy, they probably have a good chance. I'm not gonna say that they're gonna squash components later because um, the season can happen very quickly when it comes to injuries propping up, and it gets ugly after a while, as many teams are probably dealing with that currently. Probably not much
I
right now,
want
but later it'll be more prevalent.
to say this: how quickly we forget about the New Orleans Saints and what they've been able to do. They have a turnover differential of +3. They have a turnover differential of +3. They are averaging 185 yards a game on the ground. And they have averaged 5.5 yards of total offense. This team has surprised me completely. Derek Carr has not thrown, or has thrown only 1 pick. Rashid Shaheed has been a dynamic receiver. Alvin Kamara has played great. Defensively, the Saints have 7 sacks. And they have been playing very well. And the worst thing that Blake Groot has had kicking wise is that he's had an extra point blocked. So I think the Saints have found a way to manage to come together. 11 total touchdowns. Out first downing teams 46-31. Mostly on the ground. They've been establishing themselves there. 12 of 21 on third down while allowing opponents to 30% on third down. Teams have gone for fourth down on them 6 times and they've only allowed 2 to go through. They are giving up a lot on the pass, but they are forcing takeaways. Saints have only lost 1 fumble. They've had 1 fumble and lost it, but they forced 2 and have recovered 1. So their turnover ratio is at +3. So the Saints are definitely overachieving and playing better than what we expect. But I also feel like the Saints have not fully been, dare I say, tested yet.
Yeah, I agree
They
with
have
that.
the
I feel like the Saints have well, whether you like it or not, I think so far they've showed like they are doing pretty well on offense. But does that do those charcoal briquettes stay hot or do they simmer down and turn into
yeah,
mush?
and they have Philadelphia, Atlanta on the road, Kansas City on the road. So they have Philadelphia at home, Atlanta on the road, Chiefs on the road, Bucks at home, Broncos at home, Chargers on the road, Panthers on the road, Falcons at home, Cleveland, LA Rams, Giants, Commanders at home, the Packers at Lambeau on Christmas Eve. The Saints have the Raiders at home, and they close with the Bucks on the new year. So there's a couple of tough games still left for the Saints to play, and the NFL has shown a lot more parity. And the Saints being 2-0, and especially beating a team that's kind of been a walking accident waiting to happen in the Cowboys, who really have just stagnated. Yes, I said it. The Cowboys are stagnant. I wouldn't be surprised if they lose at least one, if not get swept by the Commanders this season because of their stagnation. It would not surprise me at all.
Lions.
Yep. We now move on to another team in the NFC South. And that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeating the Lions 20-16. Is this game more of the Bucs cementing themselves as a clear favorite to win the NFC South, or is this more of Motor City Dan Campbell's gambles on fourth down coming back to haunt him?
I think this gives the Bucks confidence going forward in their season later on against the Lions, but I feel like the gamble at MCDC might be a overstatement because of the fact it's early in the season. Maybe he'll realize later on in the season, even if it does come back to haunt him, it comes to haunt him later if it happens again. Because teams love to try something new, even if it's not like super crazy like what Mahomes did during the last preseason game. But anyways, let's move on.
Yeah, I think we can wait a little bit on the MCDC stuff because we do have the color commentary coming where we do mention that Dan Campbell did take ownership of a lot of things about this loss.
Yeah.
But I think that this is showing, I think what is shown especially more over the last 2 weeks. And I think this has been the bigger piece that has really presented itself clear as day. Baker Mayfield has found a proper home. Yes, I said this. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a team has helped Baker Mayfield find his what I feel will be his forever NFL home.
I honestly think that it suits them because of the atmosphere. Kind of like how the Sooners were. They had the cannons. They shot them every time they kicked off or whatever, got a touchdown. The Buccaneers kind of do the same thing.
They
But
fire the cannons for touchdowns, yep.
yeah.
But having a solid number one receiver to go to with Mike Evans. And Chris Godwin as a second wide receiver weapon. 2 running backs that they can go to with Rashad White and Bucky Irving. A defense that can help supplement them even though they've got some members that are injured. The Baker Mayfield has taken put himself into this Tampa offense And this is with the second offensive coordinator. Dave Canales has gotten Baker Mayfield to the point that now he's got this other coordinator now that he's worked with before briefly in the past. And this has ultimately made Baker Mayfield even better than where he was last year. So yes, Baker Mayfield on the front end, people would make it seem like he's a draft bust. No, I think that some of this has come more to the point of that the home that the quarterback gets established with on draft night was not the right fit. Baker Mayfield has dealt with this and has really shown that he's thrived over the last couple of years. We'll mention this more on the next one in talking about another quarterback who I think had not quite found a home until now. So I am more so in that the Bucs are becoming more of a favorite to win the NFC South. And I think the matchup with the Saints coming up here in the next few weeks is going to really decide a lot of things. So yeah, I'm saying that Baker Mayfield has found a home. And he will only get better because of it.
Do you think that this means that the Saints lead that they had over the Cowboys might be dwindled down a little bit against the Bucs? Because I can see that happening.
See, I could see that game being more of a defensive struggle, being a little more of a defensive struggle, or offensive fireworks. I think anything between these two teams here within the next few weeks can happen. Simple as that. Next game that we have on the list, Minnesota 23, San Francisco 17. The Vikings are 2-0. And the question here is, are the Vikings, and especially Sam Darnold at this point, better than what we thought they were?
All right, so was it Josh Dobbs was their savior for the Vikings until he got hurt and they had to put in what's his face to help
You had
that.
you had Kirk Cousins. You had Kirk Cousins, then they had a couple of other backup quarterback options. They eventually had Josh Dobbs, the Pastronaut, late in the season last year.
Yes. And there's another guy that didn't know how to control the ball with his hand.
Nick Mullins. Well, there was Nick Mullins as well,
Yes,
I think.
Nick
there
Mullins was the nincompoop that didn't know what he was doing. So here, anyways, so the reason why I bring this up is because I think the Vikings are in a different place, and Sam Darnold is in a feeling that he's like, okay, I'm getting a contract here, I'm playing here, but what is my actual role? And I don't know if we should say that the Vikings are definitely better with Sam Darnold. I think they still have some ways to go, but Sam Darnold has been kind of hit or miss with both the Jets when he got drafted and with the Panthers when he got traded.
Well, here's where my thinking is. I think Sam Darnold is finding himself in a position where he is finding his fit. He's finding the play style right now that is fitting and becoming more fitting to the quarterback that he actually is and could even see himself to the potential of becoming. Kevin O'Connell, yes, a former Washington, and was actually a one-time candidate for head coach of the Redskins / Commanders. Kevin O'Connell has surprisingly been very, very proven that he can run the head coaching thing pretty darn well. And Sam Darnold has gotten better. He's gotten better. He's become more polished after his time in Carolina. He's gotten more that little bit of time that he had in San Francisco as a reserve. It had to have sharpened him in some way to get him to this point of being an effective quarterback that can start games, have the competency. But also, it does help having a receiver like Justin Jefferson, for crying out loud. That does help you in much more ways than just one. And the Vikings defensively have actually been better than what we thought. And they've shown their defensive identity and played well. Even forcing Brock Purdy, who's been generally pretty good, into mistakes.
Pretty damn Purdy, you would say.
Yeah, so I think the Vikings are kind of another team that is like super gritty. They know how to win. They have a reputation of being able to win tough games, especially with Kevin O'Connell at the helm. And that to me says a lot.
All right,
Next
so
game here. Raiders
Ravens.
26, Ravens 23. The question here sets with the Ravens. With an 0-2 start, are the Ravens in a state of patience or panic?
So here's my thought here. Ravens, you have a very spotty offensive line that's making your feathers shake a little bit more than they need to. It's okay. That's what birds do. I think if you're gonna be spooky and you're gonna be the way a Raven actually is, you can't panic. You gotta be patient. Your offensive line's gonna suck for a little bit, but it's growing pains. Defense needs to step up a little bit, but for the love of God, Lamar Jackson, put Derrick Henry in there. He's ready to play today, not next week, not the week after that. Like, use the guy that your team paid really good money for and is actually way better than J.K. Dobbins or really any of those running backs. I digress. Go ahead, Spanis.
I do want to look at one particular statistic here. Yep, this is exactly the statistic I wanted to look here. The Baltimore Ravens had 11 penalties for 109 yards. Let me say that again. 11 penalties, 109 yards. You don't win football games with that lack of discipline. You do not win football games committing 109 yards lost on penalties. That very well could be things like pass interference, personal fouls, multiple holding penalties. So the Ravens spent a lot more time shooting themselves in the foot and putting them in a position where that was not the most effective way. Yes, Lamar threw a pick. Yes, Lamar had a very bad penalty or very ample opportunity to run the football all the way in at the end of the game before trying to pitch his way out of it, which he probably could have very well sprinted the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And made a defender miss. But I think that the Ravens at this point, I think they are in a position of patience. Because I don't know if you're saying panic or patience here, but I think it's patience.
I think
I think
it's more of patience because of the fact that like it's growing pains. Like I said, the Chiefs did that shit for about 2 years total between the offensive lineman room compared to now.
I think that
And
yeah,
it's
I
also
think
been
that
a challenge
it's
for
be
because
patient.
they're older, because they're younger and it's a young crew. It's gonna take a little bit, but yes, Venice is
That
right. Be patient.
yeah, I think it's patience for them because it's the defense not quite coming around and missing assignments. They're working with a new D coordinator because their last one is now the head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. They lost a game by a toe. And they just have not been able to win the tight one-score games. This kind of reminds you of where the Minnesota Vikings were last year in not being able to win those tight games. But the schedule does not get easier for the Ravens here on out. They have the Cowboys who are looking for revenge, the Bills, the Bengals. After a game against the Commanders, they have the Bucks, Browns, Broncos, Bengals, and their first matchup with Pittsburgh just before Thanksgiving. They also have to play Philadelphia, another matchup with Cleveland, and Houston. They're playing Houston on Christmas Day. The Baltimore schedule is not easy. There's not very many slouches. So Baltimore, I think, though you are impatient now, if you're sitting at 0-5 going into the matchup with the Commanders, you better start panicking. And the next and last but not least, Kansas City 26, Cincinnati 25. Is this another game where the haters are going to complain about the referees being biased toward the Chiefs?
It's
As
not
some of
gonna
the
be the
meme lords
last.
have already trolled.
I think there's always going to be a game, no matter if it's against or for the Chiefs. People are going to hate it. It's been a long time coming, especially when the Swifties came along and tried to paint Travis in a different light. But here we are. I think even then, you had it happen Super Bowl 57, the Kelsey Bowl, where people were saying that the field was not too great and it caused a lot of people to have to clean up their cleats
Oh
pretty
yeah.
shortly
Oh,
through the game. And then you had Super Bowl
and then
58
there
where they
was
said that it was
the
fixed.
hold. Well, then there was the hold. Yeah.
But I think some of those were. I feel like I could go both ways because there'll be some penalties that didn't get caught by the refs when it was the Chiefs on offense. Besides that one big one that they had to make Butker the kicker to win that, but you also have some other stuff where the Ravens did some things, so it's like you gotta like take. I guess it's more of a yin yang effect when it comes to how they do this stuff to figure it out. But I think there's just a lot of just stuff happening
The previous play
processing
before
wise.
the pass interference call was a hold against Kansas City. The pass interference call was legitimate. That receiver got there too early and also was trying to send his momentum through the receiver too early. Referees got it right. They called that legitimately, and that should be called like that the whole time. Was it timing wise the best situation to call it? Not ideal, but it was the right call. It was the right call for the situation. I'm not being a hater at this point. I am saying that there are situations where, yeah, people will blame the refs, but no, watch the game in context and you see that, yeah, there may have been a call that went against the Chiefs one way and this one went for them another. It may not truly be a makeup call, but it was being called down the middle that, yeah, if something was infracted upon with the Chiefs, they were going to call it. If there was something infracted with the Bengals, they are going to call it. They called the spades what they were. This game was down the middle, and the Chiefs had the situation timely enough to put themselves in the position that they needed to win the game. Is every game going to be like that? No. Was this game like this? Yes.
Oh yeah, because it was probably one of the toughest games on their schedule besides the first one, which was the AFC Championship rematch. So like, because you have the Falcons at Mercedes-Benz Superdome, or I think it's Mercedes-Benz Stadium over in Atlanta. I got that mixed up with the New Orleans Stadium, but the Falcons probably aren't as scary, but they can still be a trap game. But then you have, I believe, the Texans and a few other teams after that are fairly tough. But definitely, my point is these first few weeks for the Chiefs are going to be the most difficult of the whole schedule.
But here, I'm going to throw another thing at you about the Bengals. The Bengals lost this game not because of a pass interference call. The Bengals spent a good amount of time in that game shooting themselves in the foot. And I am especially going to call out Jamar Chase here, in that he used what the ref clearly interpreted as abusive language toward a ref. So there was an unsportsmanlike conduct flag called. Jamar Chase was complaining about a hit on a tackle where Trent McDuffie was still standing up.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is very dramatic in a sense. Like,
He's a diva
like
wide receiver.
Dude, he's been doing this shit since the year after he was actually good from his rookie year, talking shit, and then now he's paying for it. It's like if he was eating right during the first season and then just ate straight McDonald's and other crap that isn't good for you and then did less because of his effort between when he was healthy and when he was like, whatever.
Come on, just because you're saying you lost to the elves last year didn't mean that you were needing to turn into the Keebler elf that you were, being a crybaby, complaining and eating them cookies. Eating them cookies.
I love where you went with that. That's the title for our episode, folks.
Oh my gosh. Just send Jamar Chase back into his tree.
You gotta do it Disney style. Send that thing back for where it came from, or so help me, or so help me, or so help me, or so help me. Bum 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 bum.
And speaking of Jamar Chase, as we move into the color commentary where we take the validity meter and put it to the test, we start with Stephen A. Smith of ESPN stating that he hopes the Bengals lose every single game from here on out until they pay Jamar Chase and T. Higgins their money. Ranting about the penny pinching that Mike Brown does as the owner of the Bengals. Ruckus, is Stephen A. Smith valid? Or is he doing his usual hyperbole that we are known to see very, very often in his trolling fashion, especially against the Dallas Cowboys?
Man, it reeks in here, and it reeks of a huge load of bullshit by Stephen A. Smith, as he has done in the past couple of years when it comes to trolling as a quote unquote Cowboys fan. He's a smelly man, and that's especially what happens when you put Stephen A. Smith inside your colon asking for a Burrow beef jerky.
I think that this is definitely, I think it's hyperbole in a sense, because the hard part about the situation is that Cincinnati is not necessarily a big market football program. Though the NFL has parity across with all salary caps being pretty much the same. The biggest difference is that Cincinnati is stuck in a situation where you got to pay one or the other. And honestly, I think Cincinnati, because Mike Brown doesn't want to spend that money, he may not pay either one. I think T. Higgins is already setting himself for the first ticket out. I think he is going to walk. Cincinnati is going to let T. Higgins walk. And T. Higgins is going to go to another program where he can thrive. Now, Jamar Chase, on the other hand, this is where it gets interesting. Jamar Chase is wanting to be paid like Justin Jefferson. And I think the hard part about going in that direction to say, yes, you pay him like Justin Jefferson or more than Justin Jefferson. He wants to be paid more than him. Is where do the numbers necessarily add up? In his career, in his 4 seasons, he has only eclipsed the 100 reception mark once. His amount of yardage in a season plummeted from almost 1,500 yards to just over 1,000 to just over 1,200. Okay. So you're sitting at about an average of maybe 83, actually maybe even more, like 88 receptions a season. About 1,200 receiving yards. And about 9 touchdowns per season.
Sounds right.
Which in a real sense, are those numbers bad for a receiver for a season? About 80, say about 88, 89 receptions on about 130 targets, 1,200 yards, and 9 touchdowns. Is that necessarily, as far as a average, bad for a receiver?
No.
Okay. But let's compare this now to Justin Jefferson, who did get paid. And yes, I'm wanting to target this and use some numbers as a logical argument here. So say Justin Jefferson still is averaging right around the same amount of receptions, maybe just a tiny bit more, probably sitting a little bit closer to, probably sitting about maybe a little bit closer to 90 receptions on about 145 to 150 targets for a much larger wide receiver yardage total of about 1,300, maybe even 1,400.
Say 1,600, but that's just
Oh no,
me.
I was just throwing about the rough average here.
Yeah.
Like I'm guesstimating the average.
Doing the same
And
thing, but just not
and
as
probably
realistic.
about the same amount and probably about 8 or 9 touchdowns in a season. So Justin Jefferson is getting more receptions, maybe a few more targets, outperforms Chase in terms of yards. Actually, I'll even say this. Justin Jefferson is getting about the same amount of receptions. The same amount of receptions for more yards and probably about the same amount of touchdowns. And Justin Jefferson got paid.
Yep.
So, if you're elevating this, is Jamar Chase about worth the same market as Justin Jefferson? The numbers actually say that this is a lot closer than what even we think it is.
I think, if anything, you try to make it like $1 more, or maybe $1 million more, or a couple
Oh
hundred
no.
thousand more.
Oh
Kind
no.
of like,
No. I think Jamar Chase, he's about close to just Justin Jefferson money. But I think the diva attitude may cut him short of Justin Jefferson money.
yeah.
If Cincinnati wants to overpay, in order for Cincinnati to hang on to Jamar Chase, they are going to have to overpay him and let T. Higgins walk. They're not going to be able to keep them both, especially for the pay demand that Jamar Chase is wanting to have. And this is where, yeah, even though Mike Brown is kind of doing a little bit of penny pinching, it's not necessarily penny pinching when you're trying to strategically determine which asset is going to be more efficient for you in your offense for the Bengals. And for the way Jamar Chase seems to play and how teams want to factor him in or factor against him, okay, you can see why Jamar Chase is being heavily scouted on and how he could be an impact. But I think the efficiency still goes to T. Higgins. And Justin Jefferson is more efficient of a receiver than Jamar Chase. So I don't think you pay, based on efficiency and effectiveness, Jamar Chase as much in terms of pure logic. So I am saying that Stephen A is overreacting and using his hyperbole like he normally does. The next one here involves the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray stated that it is not his job to force targets in terms of getting rookie wide receiver and high draft pick Marvin Harrison Jr. the football after his debut of only a single catch for 4 yards. Though this was rectified a lot more pretty much yesterday, as Marvin Harrison Jr. did have 4 receptions for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns. Was Kyler Murray being valid, or is he overreacting?
I think not his job part of forcing targets could be a hit or miss when it comes to how you think of it as a receiver versus a quarterback, or a quarterback actually throwing the ball to a receiver. I think it's his job to maybe see who's open and or how to find a way to get a first down and maybe a touchdown. could help, but yeah, I don't know how to feel about that.
Yeah. Kyler Murray is actually valid here. Or at least my thinking here is that I think Kyler Murray has a point in that it is not his job to force targets. This is more so in the sense of you're not trying to force the ball to Marvin Harrison and bring yourself to the position of making more mistakes and kind of cutting into your value because you're trying to please a high draft pick. Yeah, Marvin Harrison was game planned heavily for by the Buffalo Bills. But the Buffalo Bills are going to be known for game planning very heavily against top tier receivers, especially because they have to play Tyreek Hill twice a year. Because of that, you almost enter that game expecting that to happen. Marvin Harrison gets a huge welcome to the NFL moment when you are being scouted as heavily as the Buffalo Bills did. And Marvin Harrison was able to more effectively get open against that LA Rams secondary. It's kind of like rookie wide receivers are going to deal with those bumps and bruises in terms of that nature. We just saw this with Xavier Worthy over this 2-game stretch as well. He got a lot of reps against the Ravens and being able to do stuff with the football. And then with Cincinnati, he doesn't get as much because of the film scouting between the games. Yes, things like that are going to happen as a receiver, and you have to study the film to figure out different ways to create separation and get open. It takes time. So I think Kyler Murray is being valid in not forcing targets simply because it's better to get it to Marvin Harrison when he's got the separation and being able to get open than it is to throw it into double coverage and end up with an interception that could and sometimes may have a high likelihood of turning into a house call going the other way. Fundamentals of football says that Kyler Murray has a point.
Yeah.
Lions coach Dan Campbell takes full responsibility for the loss to the Bucs, saying that yes, his team had improved on things that they needed to, but he held the team back in terms of certain situations in their loss to the Bucs. Is Dan Campbell being valid or overreacting and kind of putting a little bit too much on his own weight?
I think if you're gonna act like you're part of the ship, part of the crew, the captain always should address themselves for what they did, but also try to show why the team should be proud of them. And I think it's a good thing for Dan Campbell to say he messed up rather than just keeping it inside with his team. And I think this might help them improve in the future, not just because of Tampa Bay, but other teams. And I think it'll show.
This is why teams want or players want to be in Detroit. I think Mike McDaniel does a great job of this as well in owning mistakes. Or at least Mike McDaniel, especially after the first concussion with Tua, Mike McDaniel has been even better about it. But
Yep.
this is why Detroit has become a spot that players, especially gritty players that Dan Campbell really likes and wants to have on their team, want to play for him. This is how you get a team to buy in. Transparency of the coach. He understood and took responsibility for what it was. This is why you cannot hate Dan Campbell. He's gritty, he's aggressive, he owns mistakes. He says it was nothing that's good. It was nothing that's going to make sense to any sense to anybody. No way to justify it. It's a massive error on my part, no one else's. It's just between hurry up field goal and clocking, and it was 100% my fault, 100%. That's why we have guys on the field who try to clock it, and it's just one of the things we work over and over on, and we've been good. We do everything, and then I mess it up. Dan Campbell respected that, and then even Penei Sewell says it about Dan Campbell. It says that it just kind of just reflects what kind of people we have in the building. It says I know that he said that, but it's a team sport, team effort, so everyone has a role that plays. So definitely hard to swallow, but we have to be able to bounce back and be better. So yeah, Sewell understands Dan Campbell taking a huge amount of accountability. And Sewell says, yeah, we all had a role in it. But at the same time, Dan Campbell, I think he's hard on himself too, just like any other person who would have a hard time like saying that. And I think that
they're very competitive
really
people, and that's what a lot of competitive people do. I have the instinct too, where I'm like, damn, I wish I could do better, even though it was really like not really even a big deal. But I'm still like, bro, that's on me, homie. That's on me. Like, I try to take accountability for my own actions, even if it means it's nothing like super serious. You know what I mean? Like
nothing super serious. You're
like
owning
the discipline is nothing. You'll be fine. Like it's just a mistake, kind of thing. Not like you're getting the belt, kid. Like no.
No, he's owning up. He's owning up, and I think this will ultimately bring a high degree of maturity to what the Lions will be, and I think they will probably bounce back even better than where they thought they would be at that point.
Yeah. All right, let's keep going here.
The next one here is involving the Sunday Nighter. Texans coach D'Amico Ryans says that the tackle that injured Joe Mixon's ankle was a hip drop tackle. Did you see the play?
I saw where he kind of like got his crotch touched. Wasn't looking at his wing, but it was that tackle was kind of close to it. But I didn't realize if it was a hip drop or not because I'd never really seen the hip drop tackle. But I could imagine it's like you grab the dude by the hips and then suplex him.
No. The hip drop tackle is where the defensive player lowers himself to eventually, like, say, land on the ankles or the foot of a player, or even the knee of a player, and takes him down.
So it's like trapping them, like whenever you're trying to take down like a bandit for stealing your gold coins, kind of. Like you're like, somebody get that man, and then he like hugs a dude, and then he gets by the hips, and then gets dropped from the inertia.
But you're dropping your own bot. But the defensive player is dropping his own body to get to the legs of a running ball carrier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So say it's like it's actually dropping your hips to use your hips to tackle the legs. Like if you're using your upper body, okay, that's fine. That's not a hip drop tackle. But it's dropping the hips in a way that you want to take out the person's legs.
Yeah.
And yes, I actually will say this. The tackle that got Joe Mixon, yes, as you watch his feet, that is a hip drop tackle. Now, Jamar Chase's one, that is not a hip drop tackle because while Trent McDuffie, yes, he had to lower his hips to get leverage to be able to take him down, McDuffie did not land on Chase. He was still on his feet. But this one, the Bears defender did not. He was sliding down to the ground as Mixon was running. So yes, you could see the turf beads as he was sliding to make the tackle. Yes, that is a hip drop tackle. Yes, that should have been flagged. And referees are still, I think they're still trying to figure out the different ways that you can hip drop tackle to have that be like, to see how it's banned and why they're banning it. I think you also had the same effect with the horse collar tackle. And now that is becoming more easier to spot.
Yeah, the horse collar tackle is pretty freaking obvious nowadays, and the same with the face mask most times.
Oh, yeah. But yes, I am saying that D'Amico Ryans, as far as that statement, yes, was valid. And even Mixon was overall critical of why that definitely was a hip drop tackle and was critical of the officials for not making the call. And I think that, yes, their point is valid. Especially after watching that back. And now the last one. We're actually going into Major League Baseball. ESPN put out an article saying that Bobby Witt Jr. is MLB's most exciting player.
About damn time they named a Royal other than Salvador Perez into relevancy. And his name is Bobby Witt Jr., as he has had a hell of a season. He just passed triple digits in the RBIs for the season. He is, I believe, second to Aaron Judge in like hits and batting average, I think, right? Or am I getting that mixed up?
See, no, Bobby Witt is still leading the majors in batting average. Bobby Witt is leading the majors in batting average. Judge is third by 10 points. Judge is leading in home runs. Judge is leading in RBIs. Bobby Witt is almost at 200 hits. So Bobby Witt, I think as far as offense and defense, he is electric. He is, I think he is as good as, like, he's been as good as advertised.
I think the Royals made a slam dunk on drafting him at the start.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and being able to, yeah, I really do think that the Royals being able to bring him up in the farm system and do all of those different things certainly has made Bobby Witt a great player for them and I'm going to say it, a potential player that could really impact not just the Royals organization, but baseball as a whole. I mean, granted that you have Shohei Ohtani with his two-way ability. His two-way ability of pitching and hitting. Yeah, that's impact. You have Aaron Judge, who can hit the ball a ton and hit a whole lot of home runs. 90s chicks dig the long ball type of hitters. But Bobby Witt is one of those players that offensively and defensively can do a little bit of everything. And actually, what was interesting on ESPN's bracket, they actually had Colorado Rocky Brenton Doyle in consideration for his defense. So there was certainly a lot of different names considered. But Bobby was the winner.
Yep.
And I think that ESPN, it's not pure hyperbole. It's becoming something that is making a whole lot of sense.
Yep. All right, let's get into the stud of the week.
Yep, and I will let you go first.
All right, so my stud of the week is Brett Beach because of his handling with the Hollywood Brown contract at the beginning of the season amidst the injury troubles. We didn't know exactly as Chiefs fans what Hollywood Brown was suffering, but when it came to his injury in the first game of the preseason where he hurt his shoulder, it turns out that the healing process of the shoulder was not correct, so that's why they're doing the surgery, which is a big bummer for Chiefs fans. But I think it was a great job by Brett Beach understanding the actual salary cap of their team, the Kansas City Chiefs, and I think they hit a home run on this because it's 1 year, 10 million, but it's more of an incentive deal. So all the stuff he would have gotten this season is no longer a thing because he's gonna be on IR for a little bit.
I think on top of that, I think where the Chiefs honestly nailed it is, yeah, if they're seeing that something is not quite right and it's going to require something, like require a little more medical attention to it, that they found the proper time to address it instead of having it be a whole lot worse. So I think that this ultimately is going to benefit Hollywood Brown in the long run.
Yeah. And then my honorable mention is going to be the University of Northern Las Vegas, UNLV.
Nope. It is University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Because Nevada is Nevada Reno. So it is the University of Nevada, Las Vegas Rebels.
Yay. Anyways, there was a hilarious D-line flop against KU where they were trying to pull some stuff, but it actually, I think, went to KU, didn't
Penalty
it?
charge to Kansas.
Yeah. And then my dud this week is Tua, because he does his best impression of turning the ball over after trying to throw a ball way out of bounds, ends up not making it all the way out of bounds and turns it over. Yes, it wasn't full bore. It wasn't full bore. It wasn't full bore, but it was still hilarious to see live. Just seeing him go, and then the ball just kind of goes into the defender's hands.
Okay. This was before before the concussion.
Correct.
And then on top of that, I saw the throw. It looked like he also was more on his back foot, which meant he really didn't have a solid push on the ball to have it go fully forward. So the ball's going to hang around a little bit more in the air and feel like he's more lobbing as he's leaning back off balance. So the ball's not going to travel as far. So yeah, Tua did pull Tua turned the ball over instead of a Tagovailoa, but we can't harp on him too hard for it because he was trying to throw that on the run off his back foot, and it didn't quite have the power that it needed to get out. However, I'm going to go right into my stud this week, and it goes to none other than left hand up Commanders' newly signed kicker Austin Seibert, making 7 field goals against the New York Football Giants in a 21-18 victory, the 7th one being the game winner as time expired. Everything was inside of 50 yards, but the fact that this guy was signed earlier in the week after cutting Cade York and then he kicks 7 of them, making them all on the money. Kind of says a lot. As
Former
we have been
Oklahoma
struggling
Sooner
for a
too.
kicker. Austin Seibert. I'm trying to think if he was or not.
Because I thought I heard something about it on the Pat McAfee show, but I didn't know if this was the kicker I needed to remember the name of or not.
Let's see here. Yeah, it actually is an Oklahoma kicker, and of course, Washington has an Oklahoma punter.
So that's why you guys are doing so well.
Well, we've had this Oklahoma punter ever since he started, ever since he came over.
It's Boomer
We've had,
Sooner up in there, not just
yeah,
Kansas City Chiefs.
we've had Tressway his entire career. But my stud. Okay. You're in San Francisco. You're in their baseball stadium, and there is a right field, and you know that in right field is famous for hitting McCovey Cove.
Yep.
There have been 167 splash homers, all by left-handed batters in McCovey Cove since the ballpark opened in 2000. 104 of them by Giants hitters. And now there has been one that has been hit by a right-handed batter. Now, to think in all of baseball, without looking at what I just put down, who do you think did it?
Elliot Ramos.
It is hell. Well, you looked.
I didn't know. I was in the bathroom, so I couldn't look because I'm not in my office. But I do have a photographic memory, so I probably did look.
Yeah. So, my honorable mention goes to Elliot Ramos for becoming the first right-handed batter to homer into McCovey Cove in the victory, or as David Peralta hit a tie-breaking single in the 10th inning for the Padres. The Giants lost it 4-3, but Elliot Ramos hit a 394-foot shot into the water behind the right field stands in the bottom of the 9th to tie the game. And my stud goes to Elliot just simply because he did the one thing that not just any batter, especially a right-handed batter, has been able to do in hitting a splash shot into the cove named after a famous Giants left-handed first baseman.
All right, and then you're done.
My dud goes to the fan base of the University of California, Berkeley Golden Bears for throwing like different things onto the field as an end result of a pair of unsportsmanlike conduct penalties on them. The California Golden Bears coach had to steal the ref's mic for a moment to admonish the fans and tell them to stop throwing things onto the field to prevent more unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. Yes, I said it. The California Berkeley fans were wilding out over a football game so much that they were throwing things onto the field, and the head coach had to steal the ref's mic to get the team to stop wilding out. What is life?
Baby, don't hurt me. Don't hurt me. No more. Okay, I'm done.
That is love, not life.
That's okay. Anyways, do you want
What
me to...
in the world? Yeah, take us out on that note, because you done messed up, Aaron.
Alright, this is Ruckus and the Menace Sports Podcast. I'm Ruckus, always causing a ruckus.
I'm Ruckus the Menace.
And we'll see you guys in the next one. This is the best sports podcast in the world, the greatest podcast in the world. Some would say, probably not the greatest, because I'm Ruckus, always causing a ruckus. Anyways, we'll see you guys later. Bye.